Then you have to learn span in, span out, span om. Then you have to learn how to plow the field, basically speaking. You have to take the plow to the plow department, right? Span in means to put a horse in the cart, span to put a horse from one cart into the other, and span out, take a horse out of the cart. If you have no education. If you don't want to learn, then you're being punished. And you have to work like a poor schlep on a building site. That is a fact, you see. So in the same way, if you do not want to work in Krishna's way, then there will be punishment. It is unavoidable. There will be punishment. Just like a child. If he is not doing something, first 4 years, Chanakya Pandit clearly said a child should never be punished. Because he doesn't know the difference between painting on the wall and painting on a piece of paper. He should never be punished. You may raise your voice, na 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 na. So he understands this is my limit. You have to show limits. It's not that you let children grow like animals. You know, you have to show limits. And then between 4 and 14, 15, maximum 16, he's explained by logic, reason, argument, and there is also punishment. It's not gross punishment, not based on anger, but so that the child learns that don't do that. If you do this, and this is the consequence. And this is exactly how Krishna educates. That we learn, if you do that, that's what you get. Don't blame anybody. Even if somebody beats you, somebody takes something away from you, somebody steals, somebody destroys whatever you have, we should see the long arm of Krishna in this. It's always a long arm of Krishna, and Prabhupada said the perpetrator is just an instrument in the hand of God, just like if you give me my cane. Like, for example, you could say the cane is beating me, but behind the cane, there is somebody. So the reactions we are experiencing are really just the instruments in Krishna's hands. A person who steals, who robs, who insults us, who spits into my face on Sankirtan. We had this. My wife was singing and somebody came close to her and spit her into the mouth. It's as cruel as it can be. Or what to speak of the suffering of people in a concentration camp, or what to speak of the suffering of this mega building that just collapsed in California. Where is God in all this? There's no answer in Christian, Muslim, or Jewish religion, since they do not have a defined concept of soul. Only when you have a defined concept of soul that you understand we always have been, we are as old as Krishna, because we are parts of Krishna, that we never will cease to be. And then we can understand that therefore there's a previous life. And then everything makes sense, that I'm suffering my own deeds. Every cruel deed will follow you for years. An unremembered seed, you don't remember the seed, which grows up into suffering, into tears. People can't see that because simply they have no knowledge. That's why knowledge is so important. You have to have knowledge. You know, one time, one Christian professor, I happened to be the translator in Germany, Prabhupada asked him the standard question he would ask anybody at the beginning of the conversation. First, Prabhupada would greet somebody, make him comfortable. Mr. Such and such, Professor Porsche, in this case, I've heard you're a professor for Christian theology, Catholic theology. I'm very pleased to hear you. Now, what is your philosophy? That was always Prabhupada's approach. He would ask, otherwise you cannot talk to a person if you don't understand his philosophy. Otherwise you just preach to the wall, right? And so this professor explained, and he could see that Prabhupada, after some time, Prabhupada became tired. I mean, you can see if somebody is listening. When I look into the audience now, I can tell you exactly who is listening and who is sleeping, right? You see when people are transfixed with their eyes on what you say. With their eyes on what you say, or if they're just nodding off. So Prabhupada was kind of nodding off. And so the professor asked Srila, he says, Swamiji, what do you think of all this? And there was a long silence. I mean, long silence, a minute. Prabhupada wouldn't say anything. It was amazing. The silence was deafening. And then he said, 2,000 years have passed. And still you don't understand Jesus. The man was shocked. I mean, his whole life was theology. He's a top theologian, one of the top theologians in Germany. Prabhupada tells him, and still you don't understand Jesus. And so the man said, Swamiji, why you say that? Prabhupada said, if you understand Jesus, you can understand Krishna. If you understand Krishna, you can understand Jesus. If you love Jesus, you must also love Krishna. And if you love Krishna, you also must love Jesus. Jesus said, love your Lord, love God. And if you say to me, I want to love only Jesus but not Krishna, and Prabhupada said, that means you have no knowledge. This is the point, you have no knowledge. In one sentence, you have no knowledge. Prabhupada explained that he doesn't understand who is the Father, the origin of Jesus, and what is the connection. He doesn't understand. He has no knowledge. And so this is what we are up in the material world, that people have no knowledge. They see God in the sky, in the clouds. There is a song by one French, he was actually a priest, Dominic, Father Dominic, Père Dominique. And he sang in French, vous qui cherchez le bon Dieu dans les nuages, vous ne verrez jamais son visage. O you who look for God in the clouds, you will never be able to see his face. And that's very true. You got it. Who look for God in the clouds, that's what people do. They pray like this. They might as well pray like this. You can pray to all directions. As in the prayer of Nishingadev. Yato yato yamitato nishingo. Bahir nishingo, outside. Hridaye nishingo, in the heart. Krishna is everywhere. In one little prayer, it is expressed that God is everywhere. And therefore, people don't understand that the earth is sacred. This is sacred land. And actually nobody owns anything. There is a beautiful letter written by a Red Indian Aborigine chieftain, Seattle. That's why the city of Seattle is called Seattle, after him. He was a famous chieftain, a big man, a big leader of the Sioux community. This is a particular tribe of the Red Indians. And he wrote a letter to the American government. And he started out, he said, this earth is sacred. That was the first sentence. He spoke. And he said, it's a beautiful letter, you can find it on the internet. And in the end he said, but the problem is, with the white men, you will not be able to sleep unless the last tree is killed. Unless the last tree is killed. You will not be able to sleep unless you have killed everything. He said, the rivers are sacred, the oceans are sacred, the mountains are sacred, the seas are sacred, every piece of earth is sacred. He had this deep understanding of the sacredness of everything, because everything is Krishna's manifestation. Everything is Krishna's. He understood this, and they were just butchered. Although they were deep-thinking people, they were just completely destroyed by ignorant fools, envious fools, whose envy goes so far that they will not rest unless everything is destroyed. And that's the history of human nature. I mean, you look at Greece. I traveled in Greece a lot. Where are the trees in Greece? The mountains are completely bare because all the trees have been killed to build ships and houses, for warfare particularly. Same Rome. The whole forests have been depopulated and destroyed by lust, anger, greed, madness, illusion, and ultimately envy. These are the 6 enemies of the soul. Not just your soul, not just my soul, everybody's souls in the beginning, as soon as people walk the earth. Lust, anger, greed, madness, illusion, and envy. That's the problem of human society. You don't have this in the animal society to that degree. We were walking in the morning, you see the cows, they're sitting there. They're such peaceful living beings. In Germany and in Europe, in Holland also, you can rent a cow for 1 hour so that you can hug a cow. People who drive in the countryside, it costs them $100 an hour, a cow. And they feel such peace from a cow by just hugging her. You know, we had an interview in Germany, in Ireland, with some lady who wrote a very bad book about sex. And I said to her, all this will not help you at the moment of death. Nothing of this will help you when you die. And so this is actually the truth. Because yam yam bapismaram bhavam tirjati antikalevram. Tam tam evaiti kauntya sadadat bhava bhavitaha. Wherever the mind is at the time of death, there you go. So in Krishna consciousness, we have this understanding that Ishavashyamidam sarvam yat kincha jagatyam jagatina taktina bundrita magrita hakasya svitanam, that everything in this world is owned by God and controlled by God. Let's not forget Ishavashyam, it's controlled by God. Whatever happened at every moment, you can have a God moment at every moment by just sitting down and whatever you see and experience to understand that there's nothing but Krishna at every moment. And therefore whatever happens to us is actually because we are in Krishna's workshop. Krishna works on us. That's why we don't have to work. We don't have to worry about others. Really. There's nothing we can do about others, except we can give them prasadam, you can give them the holy name, and you can give them Krishna Katha. These things make a difference, but otherwise you cannot. Say somebody is attached to drugs. What can you do? You can preach to him forever. He's attached to drugs, or somebody is attached to sex. All the arguments in the world don't help him. You can't change him. Krishna will change him. Because in this material world, if you take what is not your own, you will suffer the reactions, 100%. You know? So in the same way how you can control a human being by punishment, so in the same way Krishna does that. He punishes people. And all these different reactions, like in biblical tradition, different plagues were sent to the crooked Pharaoh, and one of them was pandemic, and then there was drought. Half of America is drowning, in drought. So much drought that there was a film on the internet where hundreds of people on a beach in Canada to escape the heat. And all of a sudden a bear comes with his 3 children, cubs. A bear, and right in the middle of the bathers, the bear went in because he had no choice. He didn't attack anybody, and everybody backed up and pulled out his little camera. Everybody was filming it. But here a cub comes out of the forest, a bear with his cubs. They're shy normally. Right in the middle of the bathers, all the bathers made space for him to take a bath, because the world has become a hellhole. Way back in 1974, I wrote this article about the environment. I said, you have turned this earth into a hellhole. The very sentence was there. Because of lust, anger, greed, madness, illusion. These are actually the causes of destruction of the environment. The whole article was about the environment. That's all it is: lust, anger, greed, madness, illusion, and envy. These are the ingredients, but people don't understand it. They go to church or the mosque or the synagogue, and they never hear that. What they learn is to point the finger to others. This person, this religion, that religion. Very judgmental. But to see that you talk about love your neighbor as yourself, look on your plate what you eat right now. Look on your plate. Where's the love of your neighbor if you look into a slaughterhouse? The cruelty of the slaughterhouse. We complain about Auschwitz, Treblinka, and all these cruelties in concentration camps. And my father was in there, so I know very well about the cruelty of the concentration camp. But I mean, what do you expect? What do you expect if we talk about Auschwitz? Every farmyard is an extermination camp, practically speaking. If you look for the destruction of living entity, every slaughterhouse is nothing but another form of Treblinka. That's what it is. And you don't see that. You turn a blind eye to that. You stick your head into the ground like an ostrich because you don't want to see. You close your eyes. And that's what it is. People have closed their eyes to the suffering of the world. And so they're doing all kinds of things that will cause them suffering again in future. They do not see that God is not just in the sky. He's everywhere at every moment. And he sees everything. He sees everything. I remember we went one time to, what was it, Egypt. And it is Arabs, only Arabs. And I learned some words, like Allah shufkul, and Allah sees everything. So when you go to the sabji wala, and he makes a bill, you know he's cheating you. 100%, right? And I looked at him and said, Allah shufkul. He said, oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I said, you're not sorry. You know exactly what you're doing. They could speak English. You know, God sees everywhere, and you're not going to escape. So you have to adjust your bill, and they would. Immediately adjust the bill, cut it in half, because they became afraid. They had some sort of sense still there. They may be Muslims, but if you speak the right word, Allah shufkul, Allah sees everything, they get afraid. You know. So Krishna is everywhere. We don't think like that. Even when we're in Krishna consciousness, we are in a dream that you can do whatever you like and there's no reaction. You know, there is. Everything is paid for. And so in this sentence, Prabhupada says this in the most radical way I've ever read this in my life, that there is no other living beings except the Supreme Personality of Godhead at every moment. Always was, always is, always will be. And we are just his parts and parcels. There is such a universal vision we have in Krishna consciousness. Not just universal, such a all-embracing vision going from Goloka Vrindavan all the way down to the lowest planets in the universe. And everything is under Krishna's control. And not a blade of grass moves, as we all say and all know, without God's sanction. That's the point. So that's here in this verse. It says Krishna appears here and then. That is true. Yada hidara dharmasya galane bhavati bharata. But at the same time, Krishna is also here at every moment. He's present in form of the super soul. He's in, as Paramatma, he's in every atom. He's everywhere. Nothing happens without God's sanction at every moment. And so our vision is very different from the vision of mundane religionists, because at the bottom of their religiosity is that they have no knowledge. They have they're not even knowledge of the soul. There's no defined understanding of soul. If you read Bhagavad Gita, the second chapter, everything is explained. The soul is this, the soul is that. Even the size in Gaga Upanishad, the size of the soul is explained. Never was a time that I did not exist, nor you, as Krishna says, nor all these beings. Nor will there be a time that we will cease to be. For the soul, there's never birth nor death. And you tell this anybody in college, they may be dedicated to this religion or that religion, but for the soul there is no birth nor death. You always have been, you always will be. You cannot die because you had no beginning. You know? Krishna says all this. In this whole chapter of Bhagavad Gita, you can find so much knowledge. And then you can understand why people suffer, because they do not have knowledge. They think they can do whatever they like without reactions. But if you do have knowledge, then you just have to hear what Krishna says, that kamana deva nechina, that whatever you do under my supervision, you will encounter in future. Kamana deva nechina, under my supervision, you suffer your karma. And even if somebody beats you, in the final analysis you should understand it is not between you and him, it is only between you and Krishna. Somebody steals something, it's not between you and him. In material consciousness you point your finger, right? And Prabhupada said, but if you look, 3 fingers point towards yourself. As soon as you point your finger, right? 3 fingers point towards yourself. Prabhupada gives such a simple answer, that actually it is just between you and Krishna at every moment why you suffer or why you enjoy. There's nothing else. There's no other factor there. It's as simple as that. And people can't understand because they have no knowledge of the soul. So in that sense, one time Prabhupada was asked this question that, Swamiji, before you leave, you have to appoint a successor in Bombay. And I told some of you. And one of my godbrothers, he was there, Mahamsa Prabhu. He speaks Hindi, and he's a Farsi, Indian Farsi. And so he was there in this conversation, and Prabhupada said, I will not do that. I said, why not? He said, well, nobody is ready for that. He said, and besides that, and they interrupted him, Swamiji, you have to, every religious organization has a successor, you have to. And Prabhupada said, I won't. He said, I won't. But do not worry, he said. This is Lord Chaitanya's movement, and it cannot be defeated. Why? Because there's knowledge. And there's a will of Krishna behind this movement. As we know from Brahma-Vaivarta Purana, that this movement is designed 5,000 years ago and then enacted 500 years ago by Lord Chaitanya and then distributed all over the world by Prabhupada, who was predicted by Nityananda. By Nityananda, as we can read in the writings of Lord Chandas Thakur, it was predicted that my Sena will go all over the world and distribute this knowledge. So if there's knowledge, if there's truth, there cannot be defeat. Not only Bhagavad Gita says that wherever there's Krishna, there's Arjuna, there's victory. But even an Indian saying is, Satyam eva jayati. Right? Satyam eva jayati. Wherever, is it? Satyam eva jayati. So ultimately the truth will conquer. It may take thousands of years. It may take hundreds of years. It may take many generations, but ultimately it will conquer. And truth is very humble. It doesn't force itself on people. But it will conquer in due course of time. It's just a matter of time. If there's knowledge of the soul, you cannot hide it. There was one professor in Germany before, in the Soviet time, Humboldt University was in East Berlin. And this professor tested 10,000 people on a scale when they die. And he found that as soon as a person dies, he becomes more heavy. How is that possible? From a material point of view. How can he become more heavy? He is what he is. But there's something happening. Something is missing that upholds the weight of the body. And he couldn't explain it. We can understand that in the presence of the soul, everything is uplifted. And great souls, they can walk without touching the earth. Even Yamuna Devidasi told us she walked behind Prabhupada in Tiddenhurst estate, and it was muddy, and she couldn't see his footprints. And the others, 3-4 people have seen Prabhupada walking, and they couldn't see footprints. So it's angels, celestial beings, they're also there, they're not touching the ground, because it's their consciousness, the brilliance of the soul is upholding the body. That even a person who is highly spiritually elevated can walk over the water. You know, so he found out, but he doesn't have the answer. We have the answer. When I played to you a couple of days ago, when this tsunami happened, and the Pope had a teleconference, some crude form of Zoom conference that people could call in. This is now 5 years ago. And a girl called from Japan, said, Holy Father, she was a Catholic. He said, all my friends are dead. Where's God in all this? And he said, I thought the same thing, but we don't have the answer, which is shocking. This is very shocking. I mean, to the biggest religious community in the world, 3 billion followers. He doesn't know what you know, what everybody knows, but actually every rickshawala knows in India, that why is somebody suffering? Karma. If not from this life, previous life. Everybody knows. It's part of this culture. It's part of this culture. So we can be very happy, all of you, myself, and whoever ever gets involved with the Hare Krishna movement, that it is Prabhupada's mercy that is showering on us to put us into this situation, even to sit right now in this temple. It's pure mercy, Krishna's mercy. What to speak of staying in Krishna consciousness for the rest of the life. That's all Krishna's mercy. This is very special. Most people, for the soul, what is it? Some look at the soul as amazing. Some describe him as amazing. Some hear of him as amazing. And others cannot understand him. That's actually describing the ignorance of the world, this verse. Great verse for the soul. What was the verse? Huh? I don't understand. Some look at the soul as amazing. What is this verse in Sanskrit?
Ascharyavat vadati tateva chanyah. Ascharyavat shrunoti. And then Shrutvapiyanam naveda kasyad.
That's it. That's why people can understand why the innocent suffer. It is a myth. The world is driven by a myth of innocence. It's mythology, it's myth. It's not real. The truth is that everyone reaps what he sows and no one is innocent, not even a child. That is a stark truth. But you can only understand this if you understand soul. You cannot otherwise. There's no way. Even if you're a great philosopher, even if you're like this professor that I met one time, Heidegger, the biggest philosopher of the last century, he couldn't understand soul. All you have to do is go to the temple, buy a Bhagavad Gita and read the 2nd chapter, and you can very clearly understand what is what, due to knowledge. Hare Krishna. Do you have any questions? Somebody?
Kindly share something more what you shared with Srila Prabhupada.
Huh?
Hare Krishna. If you can kindly share some more pastime which you saw with Srila Prabhupada.
Okay. So we talked about the last thing Prabhupada said. I can tell you also the second last thing he said the day before, that one of our sannyasis gave Prabhupada medicine. So one sannyasi gave Prabhupada medicine. And Prabhupada asked, did you close the bottle? Because Prabhupada was a medical man. He knows that you have to close the bottle, otherwise we might knock it over. So Prabhupada would take the bottle, open it, hold the bottle here, like a glass of water, take it out, put the medicine here, and close the bottle. A simple thing like that. So he said, did you close the bottle? He said, no, Prabhupada. He said, that is your disease. He said, all of you. He said, you know how to open bottles, you don't know how to close them. You start so many new things and you don't see the consequences. We don't see the consequences. Yesterday I talked about that. We don't see the consequences. You know how to live, but you don't know how to die. And so later he called Yaduba to film his death. He said, because I have to show you. That was the last sentence in this thing. You know how to open bottles, you don't know how to close them, you know how to start so many new things. You don't see the consequences. You know how to live, you don't know how to die, and therefore I have to show you. So he called Yaduba to show the way how Prabhupada died. Last thing was Hare Krishna. So that's another thing, And then some personal thing, I remember, since you asked me, that at one stage we were translating Bhagavad Gita, 3 of us, myself, Sajjananand Swami was there, Bhakti Gauravani Maharaj was there, and myself. And we encountered this verse, that one who chants the holy name of the Lord has taken bath in all the holy rivers of India and has visited all the places of pilgrimage. So this was puzzling to us, and of course we took it for granted. That means we have been in our last life in India. That was our conviction. So when Prabhupada heard this, I asked him, is that true that in my last life I was an Indian? Prabhupada chuckled, he laughed, a little bit, He said, well, maybe, he said, but he said, most important to understand why you're here is that you understand that I've created your good fortune. I created your good fortune. So I heard this from him personally. I created him right into my face. I created your good fortune. I mean, that's a sensational thing to hear. Can't get any better than to hear it from the topmost authority on the planet, that I created you good fortune. And I felt very glad. And it's not just for myself. He created good fortune for all of us. Because there's so many college boys, and they're going from nowhere to nowhere to nowhere, They may study, they may have their PhD, but they're going from nowhere to nowhere to nowhere to nowhere. By the end of it, they realize their whole house of cards will collapse. It's like a house of cards. It looks beautiful, It will collapse at the time of death. And people have not been bowing down to Krishna their whole life. Death makes them to bow down. They have to bow down in front of God when they die. The game is over. You may have built so many castles in the sand. Like children, they build castles on a beach. But the tide comes and takes all your castles away. It's just a matter of time. So in the same way, in the material world, everybody has this God project. This God project, that project, even Mr. Ambani. Ambani? Yeah, this God, all this will fail. At the time of death, his whole kingdom will turn to dust. To dust. There's nothing not one paisa he can take with him. Not one paisa. The only thing he could take with him, if he would use his wealth to open temples, give money to, even not charitable work is nice, that gives some piety, but actually helping to spread God consciousness, that will save his neck at the time of death. That will save his neck. Nothing else. Like I told you this story, and since not everybody was there, I repeat it. There was one university boy, very puffed up, which is not unusual, in Moscow, Lomonosov University. It's a top university. And he saw the Hare Krishnas dancing on the street and went like this and laughed about them with his friends. He said, there they are, the penguins, because devotees, Brahmacharis, like penguins, There they are, the penguins. And the devotees saw them laughing, and so the devotees waved them. And he waved back. Okay, he waved. This happened for years. Whenever he saw the devotees, he would ridicule them, because he was a materialist. What are they doing? Dancing. They should study, they should get a job. Like many times in Germany, I walk over the street and somebody yells, opens the window of the car and says, "Get a job, you bum." Not in India. It's respectable when you wear dhoti and kurta and chili. They say, "Get a job, you bum." Anyway, so the devotees were dancing and he was ridiculing them. Here come the dancing penguins again. And then one day on a ring road, Moscow has 7 ring roads. It's such a huge city. Not 1 ring road, 7 ring roads. And he drove on the ring road, and all of a sudden, in his snow was drifting into his how do you call it, lights, in his lights, And there was a truck lying across the street that he couldn't see, and he jammed into it. All of a sudden, it was all darkness. The next moment, great light, and he saw 3 guys standing in front of him like this, with horns, torn faces, and claws on their hands, He was frightened like anything. And they said, "There he is." Yeah. They said, "There he is, Nikolai Notovich. We have been waiting for you." They took a lasso, threw it around his neck, and pulled the soul out. And within seconds, he appeared in a court of a brilliant building. There was a man in the courtroom sitting on a throne. He said, "Nikolai Ivanovich," that was his name, "Nikolai Ivanovich, I've been waiting for you." What did he do? And then some secretary, Chitragupta, stood up. And he said, "He was not a good story, my lord. He was hunting women, he was taking drugs, he was drinking vodka, he's stealing, robbing, etc. But one thing, the Yamaraj asked, anything good in his life? He said, yes, one thing I have to say. Whenever he saw the devotees of Lord Krishna, and everybody in the court, 500,000 people sitting there listening to every court case that happens during the day, they all went like this, and he went like this for a long time. As soon as I heard the word Krishna, He said, so what happened? He would wave the devotees. Yamaraj said, wave? How many times did he do that? 29 times. 29 times. Yamaraj said, excellent, excellent. What would you do if I give you another chance? The boy, I become Hare Krishna. So as soon as he said that, the person on the throne then, Haribol. He said, you go right back. And he was thrown into the body, and he opened his eyes, and he saw 2 doctors pressing his breast and saying, he's coming, we're getting him. So they pushed him back to life. And he went straight to the temple, Moscow temple. And he told them the story. And they said, that person you saw, you see only one time in your life, when it's too late. Yamaraj. He said, you saw him and you're back. Now you should take it up. You should actually follow what you said. He became a devotee, and he's a book distributor in Moscow. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nehavikramanashvasti pratyanavo navidyate svapamapyasya dharmasya. In this endeavor, there's no loss and no diminution, and even little progress on this path, just like waving the devotees, will free you from all types of fear. That's what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. What to speak of getting up early in the morning, what to speak of chanting Hare Krishna, what to speak of dancing, eating prasadam, distributing prasadam, preaching Krishna consciousness. We cannot even imagine. Prabhupada said, even if you would count your blessings day and night, you will not come back, you will not come to the end of the blessings you achieved in life in Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Go Premananda Hari Bol.